Hi, everybody.
Hi, guys. Hi, Sandy.
Cindy.
Oh, turning the clock off.
So if I can, I'll real quick give the background information, and then I'll turn it over to you, Bruce, to get the process started.
Okay, great.
And so tonight's again a meeting of the EAC. It is a virtual meeting, as our meetings have been since March. Tonight we'll take public comment one of basically 4 ways. You can make comment by dropping it off in the box out front, which we've already checked. You can raise your hand virtually, either by phone or by screen. If by chance you're unable to raise your hand virtually for any reason, you can send an email to public comment at newtowntownship.org. Again, that's public comment, all one word, at newtowntownship.org, stating that you're unable to raise your hand or that you have called in and you would like to speak, and we can recognize you. The other option would be for you to just send an email to public comment at newtowntownship.org, and we would read it into the record. So those are the options for public comment. I would make note for the group tonight that your first step needs to be to reorganize. You will need to select a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. And so those would be the things that you need to do first. I would suggest that we go ahead and call to order and then go ahead about the reorg.
Okay, I'm calling this meeting to order at 5:05 on Monday, the 11th. Steve, do we have to announce what the alternatives are, or?
You mean and who can be what positions?
Yes, how's that work?
So one option is to appoint a temporary chair from the group to actually run the meeting.
Okay,
And you could take nominations. We're not as locked into a certain way to do things. If you kind of just all want to say, hey, we all think this person ought to do it, that's fine. But typically, if you have a temporary chair, that gives you some structure.
Mhm.
And then you just take nominations for each position and go from there.
Well, I'll make things simple here. I think we've done well with the group we have and the positions we have. Myself as a chair or co-chair, Cindy as co-chair, and Harry as secretary. Is everybody okay with the current structure, or have another proposal?
I agree with that.
Okay. I agree.
I agree.
Okay,
So based on that, we'll keep everything as it is
Yeah.
for the next year, and you can move forward.
okay. I'm going to take roll call right now. Bruce Killen, go ahead, Harry.
As you go, before you start, Mr. Chairman, is it acceptable for me to go ahead and move over Cheryl?
Oh, certainly. Roll call. Bruce Killen, I'm here. Cindy Mahalo,
Here.
Harry Bryants,
Hi, Cheryl.
Janet Kruvanis,
Here.
Jason DeCecco. I know he's not going to make it. Sheila O'Sullivan Feeney,
Present.
and Joe Pinto.
Here.
And Cheryl Grosso, I see you're here too. Mike Russo, not here. Leonard Altieri tonight, and Steve Neese, Township Manager.
I am here.
Let's spend a few seconds with a moment of silence before we move any further. Okay. Next, item 5 on our agenda is to approve the minutes for tonight's meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, the meeting agenda has been approved. Next is the approval of our minutes from our December 7th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting?
So
Well,
moved.
I would move they be approved. Bruce, on section 9(1) of the minutes, it says Gable Park update. I think it means Greer Park update,
Okay,
but otherwise I thought they're good.
I'll make that change in the system, Harry. Anybody else
Okay.
notice anything?
Not that I see.
All right. I'll make that change to the December minutes. There's not many things on the agenda tonight, but some of them may take more time than is normal. The first thing on the agenda is 7.1. Consider the approval of the Ready for 100 resolution. This thing's been passed around. We've talked about it. I think we're done. I'm hoping people have at least had the opportunity to scan it. And I'm hoping this evening we'll have the opportunity to vote on it. As you can see, when I put it on the web, I didn't remove the markup function, but
Yeah, I would definitely remove the markups before we send it along, if we send it along.
yeah, I will. And it would go, Steve, to Joe next.
Probably, yes, just to be reviewed from a legal standpoint to make sure there's nothing that would be an issue for the board,
Okay,
so that we could say it's been reviewed.
okay,
I don't think there's an issue, but I always make sure that anything like this just gets a quick review by him.
yeah, that
And
makes
Steve,
sense.
what is the temperature of the supervisors toward this? Because, it's a great resolution and there's, wonderful effort behind it. I'm just concerned, I don't like empty gestures and I want to make sure it's meaningful. So what is the temperature of the supervisors in terms of their interest to this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it would have been nice if one of the two would have been here tonight so I could ask them. But, I think that there is some, I think that there will be some, I think they'll be receptive to it. A couple
Daunting
things.
task. It's rather daunting if you read, some of the commitments.
Well, that's where I'm saying that I'm not so sure they'll be as, I think the overall piece they're not going to have a problem with. I'm not so sure they'll agree to everything in the detail.
Okay.
When I looked at the resolution, we're really not asking for all that much. We're asking to form a task force that would lead to the development of a transition plan. Harry, are we asking for anything more than that?
Well, 100% clean energy by 2035. So,
That's a pretty big,
that's a
yeah,
big,
that's a pretty
yeah,
big issue.
that's 14 years and that's, to be fully, so that's what I'm saying, I just want it to be, Bruce, I love it. I just want to make sure it's realistic for everyone. And
Mhm.
that's my only thoughts.
Yeah, and I didn't want to cut you off, Sheila, but we just spent, probably just shy of $1 million putting in a
Geothermal, yeah.
heating system at the township building. And, that's powered by natural gas, which is not, which would not fit under that. And so, I'm not saying that we wouldn't be willing to make changes, but we do have a period of time to get that paid off before it's before it pays for itself.
Sure.
But look, here's the thing. This is your request. And I think we put it before them and let them have the debate about some of these particular type of issues.
Okay.
And so I don't think they would say it's not possible. I think it's just a challenge for some of them.
Sure.
Well, now, Steve, You don't think, and I'm not, by mentioning this, I'm not volunteering, but you don't think they would want a presentation on these issues at a working session or something, or even at a regular meeting?
Look, I would argue that, I think if you're going to ask them to do this, there should be some type of presentation that goes with it as to why you're asking and what you're looking for. Just because I think that though the concept, I think everybody's going to be familiar with, to really totally understand, I think that there's always benefit to have everyone, kind of being brought up to speed on the same pieces.
Well, my suggestion, because I was involved from the beginning of this to bring to Newtown Square, was that we have Steve Clark from the Delaware County Ready for 100. He made the presentation to us. We could ask him when the supervisors are ready to hear information about this, that he come and make a presentation for us, because he certainly has the background that none of us, I think, really have at this point. And he could elaborate and highlight what our goals are. The Ready for 100 is 2035 across the country. And I really think that there's a lot of movement towards getting, and that's just for electricity. That's not for heat and gas, right? Just for electricity. But if you would like for me to ask Steve to come and or when they are ready, when they want to put it on the agenda, that we invite him to make his PowerPoint, either as long as it was or shorter. I know he would be willing to do that.
Janet, that's a great idea, because we'd be able to address two issues. We'd help the supervisors understand it, but we would also have a chance for the general public to become aware of it and maybe take some actions on their own. So that's a great suggestion.
And if I could add to that, Janet, I think it would help if you worked with Steve to customize his presentation to Newtown Square.
Okay.
To start to answer the questions, for example, that Steve Neese just raised, for example, about the geothermal. And
Yes.
the things that immediately occur to me, if I was the supervisor, I would say, well, when is the geothermal going to be paid off? How much gas does it really take to fuel the geothermal? And as you just said, the immediate goal is renewable electricity by 2035.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that the natural gas that's needed to power the geothermal, which is, I guess, the HVAC system, that would not be relevant until 2050, if I'm reading this correct.
Yeah, it's both natural gas and electric. That's why I said what I said, because there's a part of the system that's electric. And I guess, we could argue, if we're outsourcing renewable electric, as our electric, then I think we're probably fine for that portion.
Well, Steve, what Cindy's saying is, under the resolution, heating, cooling are not targeted to be 100% clean until 2050.
I understand. I just know that our electric piece is, look, anything's doable over time. And, the township has made great strides over the last 5 years. This whole building, this whole complex has gone to LED lighting. We did all the street lights to LED lighting. We're working on getting all the traffic lights to LED lighting. So we're moving in that direction as well. And so I think the thing that I just want to make sure is that, there are some pieces of it that are still not quite clear yet. And particularly when it comes to, and I don't know if this involves the transportation side, like, I guess all transportation, does that mean the cars don't have to be that until 50 as well?
Right.
Okay,
Right. And see, these are the types of things that some of the questions that Steve's raising, that's the whole point of the task force, is we don't have the answers now.
yeah,
This is what the task force is going to do by the end of December. But in the meantime, what Steve was just saying, I think is great to be able to include that in a presentation to the Board of Supervisors to show them that we're aware of the steps that have been made recently, to show that we have some momentum. And
Absolutely.
to
That
show
lot
that,
has been done even before. So this is not, in a way, the supervisors are leading the way into it.
yeah, it's a continuation. But
Yeah,
I'm
right.
just saying that if you have this,
We want to acknowledge it.
yes, and if Steve from Ready for 100 comes, his presentation will likely be generic and will not have Newtown Township specific information in it. And I would recommend adding to his presentation.
I think
All right.
that's wisdom.
Okay, so that I will be in contact with him, and then we just need to know when they would want to, for him to make a presentation.
How soon would you guys like this on the agenda?
Like 2 or 3 supervisors meetings from now. So in either 2 weeks or 4 weeks.
So mid-February?
I would say 4 weeks, because Janet, I think you're going to need time to put together slides for his deck. And if you want to work with him and put, some additional slides together and run them by the EAC, I think we could be a good sounding board, and maybe Steve too, of what information would be helpful to overcome some of the supervisor's concerns or objections. And present it in a way that's clear. I think we can be your vetting force.
How
Okay,
does
we
the
can get some
12th,
pictures from the township buildings and to highlight what has already been done.
Yeah.
Well,
So February 8th or February 22nd?
I think we can do it by the 8th. You have to check first with Steve's availability, Janet.
I'll put both dates down
Okay.
and I'll ask him which he thinks is most viable.
So what I would recommend based on that, based on Cindy's thoughts, is that at the meeting on the 1st that you'll have, February 1st, that hopefully he could do a short presentation for the group.
Mhm.
Again, a reminder, when you're presenting to the board, I would put the impact that you're trying to make and try to do it within 3 to 5 minutes.
Hey, Janet, just real quick, didn't he, when he gave the first presentation, have like a gap of where we were and where we're trying to get? Like, I know where we're trying to get to, but our current state, I mean, that might help make a decision too, to see how heavy of a lift it is. I know we've been doing a lot of good things so far, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for it. I think it's a lofty goal and we should go for it. And just
Now,
figure out how to get there. But
it's my understanding that the DNNVR, I think is the right initials, has a readout of what each community in the county has, what their electric use is. And this is information that Steve could access for us as we're working to pass this. And I will check with him on exactly what he can find out about Newtown townships. So it might give us an idea of how much we have to strive for.
And also where we are compared to other places that have also signed on, and if they've signed on and we're ahead of them, that's a good thing.
There are about 8 communities within the within the county that have signed up already. And there are, I should have these figures at my fingertips. They're not there today, however, because there's a lot in Montgomery County and Bucks County, Chester County, that have already taken the steps to pass Ready for 100 for their communities. Right.
Well, that's great.
So let's try to get something accomplished here. Are we comfortable at this point in time going forward with the resolution that's been distributed? I'd like changes to be made now versus later, and I'd like those changes actually be driven by any legal feedback we get. Or
So I know
feedback
that-
coming out of the presentation.
Bruce, I know that you and
What are you
Hannah
doing?
and I on adding that statement about how the township is not committed to any funds by signing this resolution, that has to, any funds would have to be approved by the
Yeah.
supervisors. I think Leonard had a issue with that would be needed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Anyway, any further comments on the content of this resolution?
No,
Okay, well, I'd like to take a vote on whether we're going to accept it as is or make further revisions.
I approve.
Anybody else approve?
I approve.
I approve.
Okay, sounds like we're all set.
Did we hear from Joe?
Yeah, I
I
approve.
thought I did, yeah, I thought I did.
And now I'm unclear for the minutes. I understand we're aiming for a supervisors meeting on February 8th, but I'm unclear what Steve said about February 1.
So your next meeting is February 1. If you're going to review the presentation, you would want to do it at that meeting
Right.
so that it's
Right.
ready on the 8th. That's what I was
Right.
saying.
Gotcha.
Just giving you some dates that you're aiming at.
Gotcha.
So is it possible that we could get questions that the supervisors might want to have answered, that Steve would be able to make sure that those are included, or am I
So
jumping the gun?
what I'll do is I'll have Joe review this.
Yes,
And if you're comfortable with this resolution, I will give it to the board in their packet, not as a resolution
yes,
to approve, but as a resolution for review.
okay,
And that way, and I will tell them that there'll be a presentation. The intent is to have a presentation on the 8th. So if you find out that Steve is not available on the 8th, you'll need to let me know.
yes,
And so I'm looking here, our next meeting with the board is the 25th. And so I'd like to be able to put this in their packet on the 25th and tell them, this is what's coming to them.
okay,
And that way I can also give you feedback from
Good.
them, kind of going back to the question I think Sheila asked regarding if there was any feedback from them.
right,
And that way we can know upfront how you want some things you may want to put in the presentation to help
Yeah.
answer their questions.
yes. I think that's helpful.
So next step will be I'll take the final version, which I have, send it on to Steve, and we'll be then waiting for some feedback. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further discussion on this item?
No, but I'd like to thank everybody. We're moving forward here.
Okay.
Great job, Janet.
Oh, thank you. I need a lot of help.
Janet, you wanted to next give us an update on what's happening with Birdtown?
Yes, I think it was December, but it could have been November when I attended the Zoom meeting sponsored by Wincode Birdtown, discussing about Birdtown moving forward. It's kind of been suspended at this point. They don't have the funding. They're not really encouraging people to apply for the signs that they could get for their home, but they don't. But they want to bring it back, and so that's the goal, to keep Birdtown going. I think we certainly enjoy having it here. I did report on what we did in terms of bird walks and talks. And there is an option from the national Audubon for the signs to be available with they don't have that wonderful red cardinal on them, but they would be an option. And so I'm hoping that this spring we can move more into some of our activities. I know I've been contacted by John Custer about doing a joint bird walk at Garrett Williamson. We're trying to set up a date, but that would be one of our Birdtown activities. So that's what I have to report on.
Is it fair to say we're still a bird town, even though the program has kind of lapsed?
Yes, right. Don't rip down those signs. Now, I also attended the EAC regional meeting that was sponsored by Haverford and Peter Puglisi. Is that the way you say his last name?
Pugliese.
Oh, all right, thank you. I did report at that time on, because I think I was the only one from Newtown Square, about how we were working on Ready for 100. And a lot of them are still working out the plans for Ready for 100. So this is not something that happens overnight for any of us, right? But we do have a lot of support in that we can use resources that have already been developed by Haverford and by Radnor. So that's, I think, will be very useful. All right.
Keep talking, Janet.
All right, Bruce, I have some things for new business. I know you're going to get into your tree, but usually EAC happens before Parks and Rec, but this month is the rarity where their meeting was on Thursday. So some great things are Greer Park. An update for that is the supervisors were presented with the facts from the steering committee. And based on the recommendation from the steering committee, the supervisors listened to the concerns of the residents, but fell through with doing what was an environmental win for the environment, for the wildlife, and for the taxpayers. They're going to allow Greer Park's dam to be removed and allow the pond to naturalize into an open wetland. They'll be able to revitalize the stream, slow down the velocity of the water, and do more meandering and opportunities for silt to be deposited on the banks. It's going to be fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. It's such a great thing for the park, for the community, for our MS4 plan, for planting trees. It's just the riparian buffers will be what our goal is, but the playground will be engaging and for both our young and old, and it's a great environmental win. So I'm really thrilled about that. And the supervisors, I said, they were 100% support of the environment, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
Another thing is we're organizing through Parks and Rec at Brookside because, EAC and Parks and Rec and everyone works so hard to plant the trees. When you walk down there by the riverbank, we've noticed vines are choking, not the trees that we planted, but those that are deep in the forest. So George Sherritts and I will go down there in the next week or two, and we're going to mark all the vines that we would like to have removed. So we're going to set up sometimes between January and February. We have to be very careful with COVID. So we're not going to have a big group, but we'll be able to have different times when we can get groups of people together or individuals with a partner going out, because we don't want anyone to go out there alone. And we're going to set up parameters of how to trim the vines, where, and we'll give you direct guidelines to where the vines should be removed. We don't want pulling and tugging of the vines. We don't want to damage trees, especially when they're in dormant stage. But it's a really good opportunity to help support the trees that are down there and keep the vines from choking out the trees that are in the forest area. So that's great. And I'm sure if any of you guys are interested, we'll share that information once Parks and Rec has it all together. And the other thoughts are, just want to check with EAC about Arbor Day and the Earth Day planning. George says that because of last year's situation with COVID, and he does have some trees, and we wanted to check with EAC about what our thoughts are with this year. I mean, are we going to take a kind of a hopeful approach, or, you know, what do you think, Cindy and Bruce, about that for our planting for this year?
I think we certainly like to do it, but we're not in a position to make a go, no-go decision now. Maybe
Yeah.
we could set a date for that go, no-go decision,
Right.
but it's way too early for us to,
Well, Arbor Day is Friday, April 30th, and Earth Day is April 22nd. Yeah. So,
okay.
we should just kind of begin the discussion. If it's something that you think is going to happen, I would suggest the same thing like last year. We probably won't bring the school involved because, Cindy, we were going to just do, you know, a smaller
Yep.
group.
Yep.
And
Well,
just-
I have some thoughts on this.
Okay.
And it's based on two observations. One is, I think as I shared in a previous meeting, the Haverford Have a Rain Garden program under the guidance of Peter Pugliese, they still are planting. They have adopted COVID-friendly, you know, social distancing changes to their rain garden approach of, you know, a system of supervisors and limited number of volunteers. So it's scaled down, and they have fewer people on site so that they can stay distant from each other. You know, they wear their masks. They each bring their own tools. That they have all kinds of protocols in place. So they are still doing outdoor work. And I would like to think that we could do that too. And the second observation that I think makes this seem doable is, Cheryl, you and I went and saw the Marple Township Rick Ray plant some trees for their belated Arbor Day celebration or ceremony. And, you know, he was the one that spoke to the EAC a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And Cheryl, you can chime in here, but Cheryl and I were stunned at how different his tree planting process is. He digs the tiniest holes you have ever seen. He's a little guy, and he gets out there with his pickaxe and he digs that hole in no time flat. He pulls out a little bit of dirt, puts it in a bucket, plants the tree, closes it in, and wham, bam, he's done. And so it has really made me rethink our approach to planting bare root trees. If we've been making too big of a job out of it with, you know, the bulldozers and, you know, or whatever, the backhoes and the big holes. So I, like I said, I'm really rethinking our whole methodology of how we plant these trees and how much effort it is, and that translates into how many people are needed to do it. So I think if we want to try to go ahead, and Paul, I know we need to, not Paul, Bruce, we need to kind of make a no go, but I think we kind of need to make plans, and I think we need to assume that COVID is going to be just as bad in May as it is now. Maybe more people will be vaccinated, but I think we could plan for the worst, plan a downscaled approach, and just like really come at it a different way this year.
And didn't Rick plant in the fall? Wasn't that when he really?
Oh, he plants all winter. He plants like from like, I don't know, October through March.
Yeah. Cindy, my brother is a landscape contracting business. They just put in 100 trees in the last 3 days.
Yeah.
I mean, they're at it because there's a big job and they're at it, and it's
Yep.
it's doable. It's just that we have to. I think with Arbor Day, I think we should still have something obviously scaled back. And just like we're doing with the vines, we're not going to have a big group. We're going to have people work in teams. We're going to have all the precautions set up, and we're going to assume the worst and hope for the best. But we're going to plan as if indeed it's just as bad as it today or even worse. So I think we could still do something, but just not as big, you know what I mean, as the years in past.
Yeah, and the thing that I didn't have on the agenda, but we're going to need to decide soon is what we're going to do about installing the rain gardens. Are we going to try to do that in April, or are we going to hold off till the fall? And Bruce, I know we have like an extension on the grant, but you know, we eventually want to get those things in the ground.
Sure.
So I feel the same way about the pop-up garden, because, you know, it wasn't just the plants that were there. It was the whole week of activities with presentations and so I'm thinking about well, what we decide here about the rain gardens, maybe moving it to the fall and making sure that our funding is still available from Valley Forge. I think we already got the $1,000 from the first grant.
I think that's true.
Pennsylvania. What?
I said, I think that's right.
Yes, we spent a bit of it on some signage, but not very much.
Well, do we think we could do some planning and shake some stuff out and make the final no-go decision at our first meeting in March? Would that work in terms of the timing of the project?
I think that's late personally, because if I'm going to have to get plants for pop-up gardens, I think that would be late to get started.
So your pop-up garden is wrapped into the Arbor Day celebration then?
No, it's going to be in May. It's for the Bird Migration Day,
Okay.
International Bird Migration Day, but that's early May, May the 8th.
Okay.
I'm confused, Janet, what's in early May?
The International Bird Migration.
The bird walk, okay.
No, not a bird walk, Bird Migration Day, International Bird Migration Day. So, so it's built around that timing.
What is, the pop-up garden?
Pop-up garden, yes.
I thought you said you were thinking of pushing that back till the fall.
Well, that's what, at this point, it's still at May the 8th, but I have been thinking that pushing it to the fall would be more advantageous.
Yeah, then you can be hopefully confident that maybe more people will be vaccinated by then. And so you're thinking that in the fall, it would definitely be an in-person event.
That's what I'm hoping, yes.
Yeah. Well, then, you know, I think one thing we haven't done is tried to do enough virtual events. You know, it's still an effort to do that, but I think there are things that, you know, we could consider, you know, like I just sent something to everybody. I forwarded an email that I received earlier this week from Penn State Extension, where they have this online webinar series of 5 Tuesday afternoons, and it's called Backyard Stream Repair Series. Now, does that not seem perfect for Newtown Square or not? Backyard Stream Repair Series. Harry, I think you could probably teach this. But I think something like that would be wonderful to try to promote, you know, so that we at least have something going on this spring, even if it's nothing virtual.
I signed up for it last week.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So if I might, I think that this group ought to keep in touch with the Gather in the Circle group, who is really looking at probably trying to do a farmer's market over in the St. Albans Circle area this spring and through the summer. And so if they're going to do that, you may decide that it would be worth doing the pop-up garden anyhow in the spring, or about that time start, just because there might be people who would be able to see it, even though we might not be able to do big events with it. So it's something to think about in light of that, and just keeping, just trying to keep some things out in front of the community with different possibilities of what's going on.
Well, for the pop-up garden, we certainly have the signage and we have the pots, actually. It would be a matter of getting the plants. I do not think we could ask Steve Bastardi to donate plants now. It just doesn't seem right. But we do have that like $800 that we could use to invest in the plants. But the garden could go on without the talks that go with it. But
Well,
so
I didn't know if, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I didn't know if we could do some of the talks virtually and see if we may end up with more attendees if we, I mean, to be honest with you, some of our virtual meetings have been better attended than we ever had with people attending meetings that were in person.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you might be able to get some better attendees that way.
advertising, I think, is an issue, right?
What?
Excuse me?
Advertising, the fact that you're having a Zoom meeting about converting your yard to a native plant garden.
Well, I mean, I think we would have to be a little bit more proactive in how we were advertising, but I think that would be true no matter how we were having the meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with Steve. I think you can do it virtually. I think you'll get good attendance. I mean, your speakers are going to be speaking anyway. They're going to have probably PowerPoint anyway.
That's you, by the way, Cindy.
Well, then I'll tell you, your speaker will have PowerPoint. And then, like Janet, you and I were talking about this, where we said that, it can be taped and then it can be archived and then it can become a resource. We can have a whole library of these things. And then for the actual garden, if it's going to be outside, things that are outside are generally considered to be safer.
Yeah.
And people, you just give them the protocol and tell them to wear their mask and social distance when they're actually wandering around it and looking at it. The thing I would just want to ask Steve for anything, whether it's the cutting the vines or planting trees or setting up the pop-up garden, is do we have to be sensitive of the township and any protocols that it has for COVID that we might need to follow? So like, would the township be telling us what it does or doesn't want us to do? Or would we just put together a list of what protocols we're going to follow so that you're comfortable with what we're doing?
So what we've been doing for any organization that's having a meeting at all, what we ask them to do is put their COVID protocol together, whatever that's going to be, however they think they want to handle it. Jean Bale, who's our emergency management coordinator, is also very tied in with the hospital system. And so she reviews all of these and makes recommendations back. And she has reviewed all of the protocols that we've set in place from the township standpoint. And so we've done that with sports events. We've done that with anything that's happened. We just asked her to review it, and she makes recommendations back. We make those recommendations back to the group who's doing the event, and then we go from there. The challenge that we have with all of this is that, one of the things we try to do is follow the CDC guidelines. And it seems to me that between the state and the CDC, the guidelines are changing just about every 2 weeks. And so we're constantly making adjustments, but some things have stayed the same. Like, we're still under mask wearing, we're still under the 6 foot guidelines. So some of those things are real standard and real easy. Where the challenge comes is the number of people. But if we're doing it outside and, you pick a large enough area, I might argue that we treat it as groups instead of the whole event in order to stay within our numbers. I know last year we were able to do, worked with Sheila regarding the yoga in the park and some other things, and we were able to make that work. We were a little slow on the takeoff just to make sure we were in those places. But once we got going, I think it worked pretty well.
It was perfect, yeah.
So I think there's some things that we can do to make it work. And the fact that they've just opened up and they're starting to allow some of the sports events again with the high school and those kind of things, I think we're gonna see some more relaxing, not laxing, but relaxing of some of the guidelines that will allow for more opportunities.
So for the Arbor Day, with Parks and Rec, we won't obviously plan on the school children. And we talked about, just like last year, just EAC and Parks and Rec and, Newtown Square and Bloom. So it'll just be kind of our core organization of people. And should we assume that we're going to do some type of event, whether it be a smaller, maybe 5 trees or something like that? Is everyone on the EAC comfortable with that going forward, at least starting the discussion? And like Bruce said, if, we come to March and things aren't changed or we're not comfortable, we can make that decision, but at least we have a little bit of time to start gathering things.
I think that sounds reasonable.
I agree.
I do too.
Okay, so are we looking at a tentative date of April 22nd or the 30th? Because I do have to check with the township. I have to check with Parks and Rec and just kind of get a general. Are any of those days better for everyone on this committee?
Let's push it to the 30th.
Well, the 30th is a Friday, so we would have to do it, that would be May 1st. So we'd probably want to do it the week before because, Friday isn't a good day for when you're working and things of that nature.
Tell me again, let me get my calendar out. What are you talking about?
Earth Day is the 22nd. Arbor Day is the 30th. Usually PHS picks the day in between. So they usually pick an April day, but they might go to May 1st. I think what we'll have to do is check with George of when trees will be available. But George says he has a supply already of existing stock. And if he were to purchase more, if they were to his, price-wise advantage, he would do so. But we're not looking at doing a major planting. This would be kind of like a ceremonial type planting if COVID is really bad. And if we could get, a couple more trees planted, that would be great. But I can't imagine, more than 8. I mean, I just don't see it's realistic, but especially with the manpower.
Yeah, I think the number of trees that we plant will be under 10. We'll just say under 10. In terms of the date, I don't know if PHS has their distribution date settled, but they probably do. They probably already know that. So one of us could reach out to them and find out when they're selling the bare root trees. And if they are the bare root trees, which they always do, you really do not have any flexibility in when you plant those. I mean, they want them planted basically the weekend you pick them up. Now, if we're just going to be moving trees out of George's nursery, then we have more flexibility. But still, I think Rick Ray and other sources have advised that if you're going to move a tree in the spring, you need to do it before it leaves out.
Yes.
Either before it leaves out or after it's leafed out, but not while it's leafing out. So that's why I would be very concerned about a May date. I think that's why they look at like mid-April, because that's better for the health of the trees.
Right.
Good point.
All right. So
let me
give me a date then, Cindy. What date do you think works best?
I think birthday's the 22nd. What day is Easter? I was just looking that up. Why am I not seeing that? Okay.
Orthodox
I
Easter
believe it's
is
the
May
4th.
2nd.
Easter is April 4th.
Okay, so then that's not a problem. I don't know, the 10th, the 17th, the 24th. Sheila, do you think we'd be planting newly purchased trees from PHS or ones out of George's nursery?
I think George said that he would be able to supply us with his nursery with the selection, because if we were going to do it, we'd be doing just a smaller scale. And he was only going to be buying new trees if it was, they were, to his advantage price wise. And so he said we would not be planning, a large planting this year, but he would be taking advantage if indeed the price was good and the tree selection was good. So he just wanted to touch base, EAC and Parks and Rec, and just kind of get a feeler for everyone. I think if we give them 1 or 2 dates and they give us a date or two, we can just at least find something that works for everyone. But if you're thinking the 17th of April, that is the week before. So maybe the following week, does that work better for everyone? If
So
we do
what's
it,
wrong with the 17th?
I'm just that usually we try, PHS usually does it around Earth Day, and Earth Day isn't until the 22nd. So we'd want to do it like the 23rd.
You're looking for a Friday or a Saturday?
Saturday.
Well, why don't we just take this conversation offline and
Okay.
find
So
out when
here,
PHS
if I could throw out one thing for you, I believe that George tries to get the trees out of the nursery in less than a year, because if they stay in longer than that, they become, the root system starts to develop more. And so here's my thought. If you want to do them, we may want to do them before we get the new trees. And then they could then plant those trees in the nursery that he picks up in the spring here.
That's a very good idea.
So I'll talk to George about that possibility, about doing that. And so if that's the case, you may want to move it prior to that week, because then that way he's opened up the spots. And the other good news is we did hire 2 new public works folks at the end of December. Mind you, that just got us back up to our full complement that we were, but we did get back up to our full complement. And so, I feel good about that. And one of the people we hired has a really strong tree background and is actually a certified arborist. So, so he's not ready to be the township arborist, he told me, but we have the benefit of his strength that we're bringing in. And, he said arborists are like accountants and lawyers and doctors, their specialties. And he says, he feels confident that he can do certain things, but not necessarily everything. And so the board has authorized me to definitely do an RFP to go out and get a new arborist. And so we are doing that as well. And I'm working on that, and hopefully we'll have that for the board's approval on the 25th. And we'll get that out.
That's great.
That's
Good news.
Well, tentative date is then the April 17th. And we'll coordinate with everyone and make sure that works for George, obviously. And Parks, I just want to give Parks and Rec an idea, and also Newtown Square and Bloom. And in final closing is the letter, and I will send it out to everyone, the letter from the Career Park Steering Committee. We're asking that if you can kindly share that with any of your friends or neighbors, especially anyone who's ever spoken with you about Career Park. And the point of the letter is it provides a nice overview of the involvement of the committee and why they made the decision based on science and facts to come to the conclusion. So if you can share that, would be great.
Okay. Anything else in the old business category? Because I wanted to get to new business. We've got a half hour left, and Cindy did some work on this item, and I wanted to let her take the lead on reviewing what could be a plan to put 1,000 trees in the next 5 years.
Okay, let me get that document up. I didn't know I was taking the lead on that discussion.
Sorry.
It's okay. Let me get it out.
Is this the document you want up, Cindy?
That's fine. That's fine. There is also a Word document, which is actually a plan. Let me,
You distributed that about a week and a half ago, is that right?
yep. I'm sorry, my computer is not looking normal here. There we go. I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time finding everything here. You don't, Bruce, did you attach it with the,
I did not. I didn't want to
okay,
distribute it in its current state. I
Okay.
can talk to it a little bit if you want.
yeah, well, why don't you give the background on how we ended up at 1,000 trees?
Okay. Well, it seems like we've been talking about trees for a while, and there's been a number of projects that have either involved trees or potentially involved trees. And our township has had a net loss of trees for a lot of years now. My neighbor just the other day, poor guy, new person moved on the south side of him, took all the trees out. A new person moved on the north side of him, took all the trees off the property. And now he's got a sun-exposed house that he's not very happy with, but there is nothing he can do about losing those large trees. So I think we have to compensate for those losses with getting to a stretch goal of 1,000 trees, but I think it's a reachable goal if we spread it over 5 years. I have a list. Cindy?
Yeah,
You're still
ahead.
lost? Or you ready?
yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, I'll let you go from here then.
Yeah, can you do a screen share with me?
If I stop screen sharing, you can take over.
Okay.
You should be able to do a screen share now.
Okay. Oh. Okay, can people see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So when Bruce set out this goal of thinking that we should plant like 500 trees, it came up in conversation, and George Sheretz weighed in and Steve weighed in, and we were linking it to the MS4 plan to try to get a broader range of stormwater management best practices in there. And Steve Neese, to his credit, said, let's go big or go home. So he said, I think we could try to plant 1,000 trees. So where the MS4 plan stands, which this would be an adjunct to that, which the EAC proposed, the MS4 plan is in its final round of approval by the DEP, and it includes this goal of planting 1,000 trees. So if it's going to happen, you need a plan. You have to plan your work and work your plan. So I thought, how could we do this? And if you're looking at my document here, can you see it in my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, so I thought, okay, this is my first pass at a plan. So the basic goal is 1,000 trees in 5 years, because that's when the township has to achieve its MS4 goal. The MS4 plans go in 5-year increments. So because our township has 2 watersheds, we say, okay, let's try to do 500 in Darby Creek on the east side in the Darby Creek watershed and 500 on the west side in the Crum Creek watershed. And you always have to have a vision. So our vision, and we want to tie it back to people, is to protect human health by reducing the negative impacts of increased traffic emissions and pollution. And we want to support the achievement of the MS4 pollution reduction plan by planting 1,000 trees by 2025 and establish an ongoing maintenance structure of funding, systems, tools, and volunteers to sustain the tree canopy. Because it's not going to be enough to just throw 1,000 trees in the ground, because as Sheila just pointed out tonight, vines come in and they tear your trees down and people cut trees down. So to me, this has got to encompass a bigger effort. So to undertake something of this scope, I think takes more than just the EAC. We can't do it by our lonesome. So I think what would be helpful is to have a tree planting task force of key stakeholders, and you might have members and liaisons, and the people that might be on this task force would, to me, logically be representatives, someone from the EAC, Public Works, Parks and Rec, the new Shade Tree Commission, and the township engineer. Those might be, and I don't have, well, those might be the core members. Then you might also have, oh, those would be from the township. Then other core members would be perhaps someone from Newtown Square and Bloom. I think we need to involve people from the watershed associations. And then because we may want to plant trees on business properties, someone from the Business and Professional Association, just so we don't have all the usual suspects at the table, but we try to broaden it a little bit. And then throughout the 5 years of implementing this, the task force would probably get into conversations with major landowners. These people might not necessarily have to be primary members of the task force, but you would definitely want to liaise with them. And we're like the golf club, Dunwoody, Garrett Williamson, the school district, the Campus Boulevard Corporate Park, houses of worship, homeowners associations would all be good organizations to reach out to when you're talking about trying to plant trees widely through the community. So if that's who is going to be leading and participating in this, then what is the task force going to do? Well, I think one of the first things it would have to do is identify best practices, look around at other cities and states that have had large tree planting initiatives and learn from them, not reinvent the wheel, but say, okay, how have these other organizations done it? And so there's a link here when you get a copy of it of how New York City planted 1 million trees, and they did. They had a Plant 1 Million program that was largely led through the Parks District, and they succeeded. And this article explains how other cities that have tried to do this, like Boston and maybe Portland and Philadelphia, have not achieved their goals yet, but New York City did. And then there's this interesting group called DPAVE. This is a group out of the Pacific Northwest that goes around ripping out asphalt. They find parking lots that are not used anymore or are oversized, and they get donations and they get the permission of the landowner, and they go around ripping out asphalt and planting rain gardens and trees. And I'm especially intrigued by that because at our recent meeting with Eileen Nelson, she emphasized that in terms of tree planting, really giving us our most bang for the buck in terms of meeting the MS4 goals, it really is better for a tree to be planted where impervious surface has been removed. So then I think the task force will have to come up with a 5-year plan. That plan should align with local and regional tree planting efforts, of which I listed a few there. They would have to identify funding sources. There's a couple examples there. They would have to identify a system for tracking and monitoring these trees. And Sheila, this picks up on one of the things you said, which is about a tree inventory and what kind of software and mechanism are you going to have to keep track of these trees? These are a valuable resource. And I'm thrilled that Steve has said that the township is going to fund a township arborist, because he or she might likely be the keeper or an advisor on what software and system to use for this. And then that will provide information for not only tracking and monitoring the progress toward the 1,000 trees, but be an invaluable tool for ongoing maintenance and tracking when trees are cared for and when they need maintenance. And then to help care for these trees, and like the first year or two, water them. Who's going to water all these trees? Well, you and I can't do it all. But hopefully the task force would help recruit and train a cadre of resident volunteers. What I envision is like neighborhood tree captains, friends of parks, or tree tender groups, just like a number of us have taken the tree tender training. Like if like neighborhoods had trees planted up and down the streets, whether it's Beechwood or Brookside or something like that, can we get 2 or 3 neighbors to finish take the tree tender training program and form their own little tree group? And the task force would have to identify planting locations. And Steve, we can go back to that other map. We don't have to do that right now, but that's what that map was for. And then there'd have to be ongoing communication to inform and engage residents and landowners. And then here I kind of repeat myself. Well, develop a cloud-based tree inventory system such as iTree. Well, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. And then, there's a lot of overlap here of how this could coordinate with other township initiatives and have synergy. And there's so many that it aligns with, such as the use of native plants, the Audubon Bird Town, trails enhancement, park revitalization, the Ready for 100 and climate change resiliency. Newtown Square and Bloom has this business district tree planting initiative. So there's a lot of ongoing efforts that this would tie in with. And then the next steps might be that the EAC today is reviewing this plan and comment on it, think about it. Steve, let you know what we're thinking. And then depending on what we think, take this idea and socialize the concept with leaders of some of the other proposed task force members, see what they think, get their buy-in, and then, try to have a kickoff meeting. So those were my initial thoughts. Now, Steve, just before we open it up, can you just, I'll stop sharing my screen and then we can go back to that map that you had.
Cindy, may I say, it was so well thought out.
Oh, thanks.
The one thing that I might add is that in order to get the power of the board behind it at some point, I think we might want to take and do a short thing on this in front of the board, and then we'll look at the members. One of the members that I think you had on there, but I want to make sure we have a shade tree member,
yes,
as part of that. And so, but I think that that if the board were to sanction the group that's doing this through a resolution, it would give some good ownership.
Great, that's a good idea. So this is a map that Eileen Nelson, the Stantec engineer, developed as part of the MS4 plan that was submitted to the DEP. And the best I can understand is that if you look at the legend up top, the blue dotted line that runs basically north-south, kind of along 252, is the watershed divide with Crum Creek on the left and Darby Creek on the right. The streams are in blue. The white areas, the parcels, those are significant because those are excluded, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but the white areas are excluded from the MS4 plan. I'm not going to explain why, maybe because they have their own stormwater management.
It is because they have a set stormwater management in place already.
Yes. So that's why big areas of white are white. And
Well, I say that there's also another possibility is the way that there's nothing from public drainage going to that area. So in some areas, it's because that they have their own stormwater already in place. And in some areas, it's because there's nothing that comes off of our roadways that goes through that area. And so or it comes from that area. So
see, and now that's puzzling to me. This is kind of a rabbit hole here, but if you look at Fox's Run as it goes down to Brookside Road, and it goes, you can see where it's going through Brookside Park. That shows that Brookside Park is white. So Steve, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why is Brookside Park white? Because isn't that an area where she's proposed stream restoration?
It is an area, but if you look there, it's part of it's white and part of it's green. And so what it has to do with is the area where the water flows from and how it gets there. And so if the areas that are white may not have, the flow may not be coming from our roadways, and that we may be capturing the water before it would get there. And so therefore it would not be included in that area.
Well, I still don't quite understand that, but I will accept that for now and set that question aside.
Well, I know that's one of the things that we've gone through with DEP. They've looked at this map very closely and made sure, and I may be explaining it wrong, but
Yeah.
my understanding is there's two reasons why they're white. One is because like, for example, the Lister area, their stormwater is being handled and all being taken care of on site. And there's a major stormwater piece on site. So that's what's going on there. But some of these other areas, the water is not, our water that runs off of our roadways does not go through there, or it's not, or their water doesn't come onto our roadways.
See, and I appreciate you explaining that, but I'm specifically looking like at Ashley Road and Fox's Run.
Yeah.
And how can the water that goes down Ashley Road to all those houses that back up to Ashley Road, how can that not be the township's responsibility? Like, where else is that water going to go?
I think it has to do with how the water flows. And so I'm not saying it doesn't, I'm saying that it's not off of our roadway. So for example on Ashley, I think the water flows back down, and see where it's green going back to Fox's Run off of Ashley?
Towards the west or the left?
Towards the west, yes. So the water's running back that way based on the contours, or the roadway is taking it because of the way the roadway is set. And so the water is coming in and it's feeding from that side onto it.
Cindy, I also understand, I asked Eileen a similar question, and what she mentioned is that there is no stormwater, the receptors on the street.
Like an inlet?
Yes. So therefore, they're not necessarily processing it, is what she said, because to me, I brought up that same issue regarding Beechwood. But I think what it is there's no known sewer stormwater facilities that is through the township processed at that point, is what she's saying.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow.
Which doesn't make sense to me because I saw there are stormwater outlets, but basically they're draining to nowhere.
They've got to go downhill someplace.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So,
But it's not necessarily the township's problem per se, but
Hmm.
it's very vague to me, but but that's what
Well,
I asked Eileen the
She
same
can
question.
come in and explain it. I can get her to help explain it, but there is a whole process they had to go through. And
right,
it's being reviewed by DEP, and DEP is agreeing with what this is. And they've challenged us on some of it, and we've had to go back and redo it. That's why it's
Right.
taken so long.
well, I will still set that aside, but the point is that it's my understanding, and we would have to have Eileen weighing in on this carefully, is that my understanding is that we would want to plant the trees in the green areas.
That is correct.
So that's the high level point here. But that's a shame because you've got so much of Fox's Run that is in the white. And just south of that along Bryn Mawr Avenue, you've got all those homes along the headwater there of that stream that runs adjacent to Bryn Mawr Avenue. And then up in the upper left in Echo Valley, most of Crum Creek, which runs through Echo Valley, would not count. Like all those homes that are like between Crum Creek Lane and Battles Lane, those are homes that you would want to have plant a riparian buffer along the stream, and you would want them to plant trees along the stream. Because to me, that's, you want to protect the streams, but that's not in the green. So
Listen, Greer Park is in the money mare area because if you plant riparian buffers in that area, that you get double credits for your MS4. So Greer Park is actually a fantastic opportunity because we'll be able to plant the trees and receive double credit.
oh, that's great. Now, why is it a double credit?
Because you're planting a riparian buffer in that zone.
Oh,
So MS4 credits, apparently you will get double the credits.
great. Okay, so that's the last thing I have to say, was just trying to show this map.
I'll
And the
jump.
green squares, remind us of what the green squares are.
The green squares are in, as it says in the legend, a stormwater best management practice. And there is an official list and handbook of these published by the DEP. And it includes things such as rain gardens, bioswales, bioretention basins, detention basins, things like that. And they have been identified as part of this. I guess it was quite a laborious process or whatever, but the engineers went around and I guess physically looked and also checked records and have, there's a complete Excel spreadsheet that lists all of these, of what they are and how big they are and the exact address.
Anytime somebody does a addition beyond 500 square feet to their property of impervious coverage, they're required to do stormwater management. And if they do it certain ways, that's what's recorded here. That's how we keep that record.
Okay, thank you.
And I mean, there's actually, and part of that is that there's actually a stormwater agreement that's signed with them that they must maintain that. And so, and it's inspected every year.
Huh.
So it sounds like the next step here is for us to put together kind of a straw dog proposal for the supervisors to give us the blessing to work on this. And out of that, we put together a plan. So Steve, you mentioned a resolution. Do we need a resolution to form this task force?
What I think a resolution from the board does is gives it the authority.
Okay,
And so and because I don't think it's a permanent thing, I
right.
think just a resolution stating that that the board supports this and that and allows the board to kind of go through and say, these are the people who we want to make sure are on this committee, and just
Okay.
verifies that. And so I think that that's the positive to it.
Okay.
And Steve, do you think we should do that first, or should we reach out to the Shade Tree Advisory Commission? Because I want to be very sensitive to them.
Sure.
I think that if it comes from both of you, there's a lot more power with it. It's like anything that if, and I would argue that I would reach out to my parks group. I would reach out, so I would look at the Parks and Rec group. Excuse me?
We all sign on to it.
Yeah, if all three of you come in, which are all three, board appointed groups, saying that we think this is important, I think it gives it a lot of validity. And it also helps to say, here's how we think this ought to be set. Here's how we, and bring that before them. And if they disagree, they can give you guidance on that. But if you have the board behind it, there's two things that you're going to get. One is that you'll get their support, obviously. And but really what's mostly important as the time goes on, if you need funding, they've already taken ownership from the board perspective. And, there's not that I can guarantee funding with it, but it increases the chances of getting funding.
So our next step is to put a resolution together. And after having reached out and put a little structure around this.
Yeah, I would say that you could probably run both of them simultaneously.
Okay. Another thing, Cindy, just a detail is if we're going to plant 1,000 trees in 5 years, 5 years is actually the end of 2025. It was only 4 years. We were doing it by 2025.
Okay, that's a good point. And if people, I think I sent this to the EAC members, and I'd love to get people's comments if you want to get back to me afterwards, or get back to Bruce with any comments.
I have some more comments now, but I'll send them to you in email.
Okay.
Great
Thanks,
job, Cindy.
Thank
Further
you.
discussion on this item?
No?
Nothing?
I think Cindy did a great job. I would ask if we can, if we're really trying to plant 1,000 trees for budget considerations, shouldn't that be an item that Bruce, you'd be able to at least get the supervisors for 2020, for next year's budget, that they come summertime, they consider start allocating some funds in advance for this?
We'll want to make that a part of, for sure, the 2022, 23, 24. What I would say is that we want to tie this with the MS4. And so until DEP signs off, and if they take as long to get back to us as they have a couple times, we may be June. So it may be a little later out, how our 5-year plan works. So we just want to see how all that pulls together.
Okay, now the agenda is not totally right. We're not going to adjourn the meeting before we ask for public comment, but it's public comment time. If anybody has anything, please let us know. No comments, but with that, I'll adjourn the meeting.
Bruce, could I add just one thing?
Yes,
Next Monday, there's a Ready for 100 Delaware County meeting at 7:30, and the Assistant District Attorney, Melissa Muroff, who is the Chief of the Environmental Crimes Unit, is going to be making a presentation to those attending. I will send out that email.
yeah,
But it might be something very interesting for us all.
sure.
Oh, one more thing is the DCVA reached out to me and asked if I would speak at their annual meeting later this month. And they wanted me to talk about Earl's Lake dam removal. I said that's really not an appropriate topic for the EAC to talk on. So I'm going to be talking about the Greer Park dam removal. Sheila knows that, and Wade knows that. So they're interested in it from a park revitalization and MS4, and because it is in the Darby Creek watershed. So that will be happening later this month.
All right. Well, I'll adjourn this meeting right now at 6:30. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
You too.